This prophecy in Daniel 9:27 is extremely important, and those who don't understand it will not know when the Great Tribulation is going to begin. Greetings, friends and brethren. This is Dr. Bob Thiel of the Continuing Church of God. Today I'd like to talk about Daniel 9:27 and the start of the Great Tribulation, and why, despite the fact that Daniel 9:27 is in the Bible, and it gives us an indication when this Great Tribulation will begin, most people will not pay attention to it. They will ignore it. They'll discount it. They won't really know what's going on. Daniel 9:27 is extremely important, and I'd like to read something starting in Daniel 9:26 to give us a little bit of the background. Daniel 9:26 says, "And after the 62 weeks, Messiah shall be cut off, but not for himself." So Jesus came and Jesus was killed. That happened. But here's the relevant parts for our prophetic discussion today. "And the people of the prince who is to come shall destroy the city and its sanctuary." Okay. Jerusalem was destroyed in 70 AD by the armies of the Roman Empire. Okay, so we see that that was supposed to happen, and it did. But there's a prince who's going to come from those same people. So in the future, somebody who's from the ancient Roman Empire territories is supposed to rise up. It says, "The end of it will be with a flood. Until the end of the war, desolations are determined." Verse 27, "Then he," that's this prince, "shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week. But in the middle of the week, he shall bring an end to sacrifice and offering. And on the wings of abomination shall be one who makes desolate, even until the consummation which is determined is poured out on the desolate." So we see this prophecy. We see a couple of terms. One is the idea of being 1 week. Now, from a prophetic perspective, one prophetic week is generally understood to be 7 years. So half of a week would be 3.5 years. Now, there's quite a few reasons why this prince is mentioned in verse 26 and in verse 27 is European. We have videos and articles that go into that. But basically, in addition to the fact that it was the Roman Empire that destroyed Jerusalem and the temple, the Bible in Revelation chapter 13, verse 1, talks about the beast of the sea rising up. And that fits with the description of the beast in Daniel 7:2, who comes out of the Great Sea. And according to the Old Testament, the Great Sea is the Mediterranean Sea. And so if you look in terms of history, the old Roman Empire actually went pretty much around the Mediterranean. And now what we have is that the Europeans control the northern part of the Mediterranean. And eventually they'll control part of the southern part as well. But in ancient times, the northern portion of Africa was not controlled so much by the Africans or the Arabs, but by the generals that were part of the old Roman Empire. Now I'd like to read from a couple of commentaries about it. The first one's going to be from the Wycliffe commentary. And bear with me because some of this is a little bit technical. But I'd like to read this because it gives an understanding about people who studied some of the Greek a little bit more. It says, "Shall Messiah be cut off, but not for himself? And the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary." And it continues. It's agreed by almost all evangelical interpreters that these two events, the cutting off the Messiah, or the anointed one, and the destruction of the sanctuary, refer to the crucifixion of Christ and the destruction of Jerusalem by the Romans. These two events were separated by nearly 40 years, yet in the literary order of the passage, they are both after the 69th week and before the final 1 week mentioned in the next verse. So they're saying, okay, regarding Daniel 9:26, first part of this is talking about Jesus. Then, after Jesus being cut off, crucified, the destruction of Rome. And then in the next verse, there's 1 week left. And they say Jesus placed the culminating week with its abomination in the times of the final Antichrist, just before his second advent or second return. And they cite Matthew 24:15. Then they cite Daniel 9:25 describes what appears to be the same events as those of Daniel 9:27, the 70th week. It's certainly a prophecy for the time of the final Antichrist. The period of 3.5 times or years, the second half of the week of verse 27, again I'm reading from the Wycliffe commentary, is often mentioned elsewhere in Scripture, always in an eschatological setting. Eschatological is a word meaning prophetic, end times. The 6 things to be accomplished in the 70 weeks require the second return of Christ, the restoration. These considerations show the idea of a gap in the weeks at this point is not a matter of exegesis. You're getting technical again. Not a matter of just explanation. It says considerations of theology are not primarily involved. It's not the author's opinion that the church is a mere provisional consideration thrust into this gap. He cites somebody else by the name of C.F. Kyle. Says is correct in asserting that the prince is said to be coming because he's already introduced and discussed in the prophecy of chapter 7. So that's correct. This prince, the people who is to come, is a prophecy for the end-time beast power. Then they cite the Romans destroyed Jerusalem 70 AD. They were his people because they belonged to the 4th stage of the Roman Empire. And then they cite Daniel chapter 2 and Daniel chapter 7. Now here's where it gets a bit more interesting or even confusing. And the reason this is somewhat confusing is going to affect people. This prophecy in Daniel 9:27 is extremely important, and those who don't understand it will not know when the Great Tribulation is going to begin. Some may guess right and get lucky. Almost every year, or pretty much every year since like 2007, I've denounced people who said the Great Tribulation is going to begin that year or the year after or whatever. And if people predict it every year, some of those people are going to get it right by accident. They'll maybe have a different opinion. But the people who know their God and who are most faithful should realize what's going on. And if you don't understand what's going on in Daniel 9:27, this will make many people not realize how close the end really will be. Well, anyway, getting back to the Wycliffe commentary, it says, he shall confirm the covenant for 1 week, make a firm covenant. The language higbir from gabar, be strong, does not necessarily confirm a covenant, but a causation of a firm covenant. He shall cause it to prevail is an excellent translation. So their view is he's not really confirming a covenant, he's going to make it happen. Other translators have a different opinion on that, by the way. Then they say the most natural antecedent for he, in Daniel 9:27, is the wicked prince of verse 26, and that is correct. This is the nearest noun in the grammatical agreement, and it fits in this sense. Evil and destructive events described in the remaining of this verse should be interpreted as summary information concerning the final, quote, time of Jacob's trouble, Jeremiah 30, verse 7. So they're correct that what we call the time of Jacob's trouble, or the Great Tribulation, will begin after this 3.5 year into this agreement, once it's been confirmed or caused to begin. That's when this is going to occur. And that will be the beginning of the Great Tribulation.